Hey guys, and welcome. Shalom Yair. It's good to see you. We're here on a special podcast today. For the first time, separated in body, but not in heart. Good to see you,
definitely. It's been a long time since we were together on this podcast, and I really missed you, Mati. So it's good to be back.
I'm missing you.
And we have a lot to discuss, like multiple assassinations. Some confirmed to be Israeli.
I have the soundtrack. I have the soundtrack for today's show.
Yeah.
We talked about this earlier.
Dun,
Doom, doom, doom. Another one bites the dust. Because it's been a very, very busy week for Israel and Israeli forces, and possibly not Israeli forces. You were just saying, like, there are several enemies of this country that are no longer in this world with us. And it's been an exciting week.
I think that the world is definitely a better place today than it was, 3 days ago, without these really evil people that were annihilated, either by Israel or by someone else. But, we are not complaining. If some other people want to help us to destroy these evil people, we take it. Right, Mati? I think it's really good.
100% of the time. So today we're talking on the TBN Israel podcast that has a new format because Yair is on a world tour. It has a new format. We're talking about all the assassinations that are attributed to Israel or enemies of Israel that have disappeared in mysterious circumstances in recent years. But these last couple of weeks have been highly, highly eventful between Muhammad Def and several recent assassinations and a long string of people that have, in the middle of a refugee camp, in the middle of a bunker, in the middle of who knows where, they think they're safe, they think they're protected, and Israel's long arm, be it an Air Force jet or a missile, or some of them we don't even know how we got to them. They're no longer with us.
It's
these turned up the volume.
These are people that felt safe. Let's talk about Ismail Haniyeh. Ismail Haniyeh is the leader, the political leader of Hamas. He was before that. He was also the military leader. He was in Yahya Sinwar's position for many years in the Gaza Strip, and then he evolved and upgraded himself into living in luxurious hotels in Qatar and dealing with the money side, with raising funds, with creating connections with other entities such as Iran, such as Turkey, such as Qatar. And this time he was traveling to to Iran, to Tehran, to basically give honor and participate in the new presidential ceremony of the Iranian regime. And a day after the ceremony, that's when he was assassinated in his room together with his bodyguard. And the attack was so precise that only these two people were neutralized. Of course, Israel did not conform nor deny these attacks, but the Iranian regime and Hamas immediately blamed Israel and vowed that there will be a retaliation against this attack. And that's only one of the assassinations that happened in recent weeks, months, and in this time since the war started.
Yeah, and again, we use the word retaliation lightly. Essentially, there's been a more than 10-year at this point streak of Israel with pinpoint assassinations of Hamas leaders again and again and again and again, of Iranian officials and Revolutionary Guard officers who have been taken out, whether inside Iran or outside of Iran, even in other countries, who they don't see it coming, and suddenly the person is no longer with us. And we've done it systematically. They've retaliated. These last attacks by Israel are not out of the blue. This last week saw a very bloody attack by Hezbollah rockets on a soccer field in northern Israel that left us with multiple killed children in northern Israel. It's been a bloody week in that sense. There's a huge amount of public pressure in Israel to respond. And then together with the fact that Prime Minister Netanyahu just got back from a visit to the US, and we feel sort of the clock running out of time to respond and to bring things to, I don't want to say an end, but to make any substantial moves, the pressure was on the Israeli government to retaliate publicly and to retaliate with strength. And that's exactly what happened. We have top-notch officials of the Hamas, a top-notch official of Hezbollah, who in places where no one expected them to be attacked, and again, they weren't hiding. They were in plain sight in an apartment, inside a building. They were taken out. They were taken out surgically. They were taken out accurately. Impressive operations.
And guys, we've been saying that this war is being fought on multiple fronts. So we have the physical front, we have the front for the truth, and we need your help on that front. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel at TBN Israel, and we just launched another news update platform on Instagram. On that platform, we update you on an hourly basis. So if something big is happening in Israel, you can be tuned to that and pray for the situation live. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel and to our Instagram account at TBN Israel. Okay, so let's talk about the Hezbollah official that was also assassinated. Yes. And for this assassination, Israel is claiming and taking responsibility. This is the chief of staff of the Hezbollah terrorist organization. So he's the right-hand man of Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah. Okay, Hezbollah is an organization in Lebanon. It's basically the long arm of Iran that has a border with Israel. So Iran has been supplying this organization with missiles, with advanced weaponry, with experienced engineering people and military advisors to equip this organization basically to take over this country and use it as a base of operations against Israel. And basically on the 8th of October, one day after Hamas invaded Israel, Hezbollah started and firing rockets and opening another front against the Jewish state. And this recent time, a week ago, they launched a barrage that hit a soccer field inside an Israeli community in the northern part of Israel and murdered 12 Israeli children and kids together. And this happened in the Druze community. Okay, so it's important to understand that this community was not hit this severely by Hezbollah since this war began. Okay, and this community has family members inside Syria and inside Lebanon as well. So this changes the picture a bit. And Hezbollah is afraid to claim responsibility for this attack because they don't want to open another front within Lebanon or within Syria with the family members of these Israelis that were attacked and live in Lebanon, in Syria. Okay? So maybe Mati, give us a brief explanation of who are the Druze so we can understand, and then we go back to the assassination.
Yeah, I think the point you make is very important, Yair, in the sense of this isn't just Jews fighting against Islam. It's multiple types of Islam fighting against multiple different ethnicities within Israel. There's no other word other than catastrophe that happened in northern Israel in Majd al-Shams this week.
Yeah.
You know, the images, don't look them up. If you have a soul and a soft heart, don't look up the images from that attack. Brutal attack on it was on a weekend, soccer field with dozens of kids. These are children, pre-teens, playing soccer, both boys and girls, and a rocket with over 50 kilos of explosives, according to what we're hearing, hits in this middle of the soccer field. And the kids in this village, which is very close to the border with the northern border of Israel, the kids are not expecting the attack. The alarms don't go off because they're so close to Hezbollah launch sites that the Iron Dome systems don't always pick up on it.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into the technicalities, but again, this is a minority within Israel, the Druze minority, which are I'll tread lightly saying this, they're a sect that split with Islam centuries ago, but they're at odds with multiple streams in Islam. They have a strong allegiance to the state of Israel. They serve in the Israeli army at a very, very high proportion in combat units, as trackers, as many different things. Many of the community that live up north serve in the army on a regular basis throughout the country, not just in northern Israel. And as you said, they have family members across the border. They have family members that live inside of Syria, live and serve within Syria. So it's always this tenuous relationship. Now that's talking about the Druze community up north and that attack. But what we're looking at here, and this is where we want to sort of zoom out and give a bigger perspective, is the difference in the use of power. Hezbollah, the Iranians, they use power in an arbitrary sense. You know, they shoot the rocket, they don't always know where it's going to land. They don't really care where it's going to land.
Yeah.
Israel goes to extreme lengths to make sure that it's as much as possible, and I say this carefully, as much as possible surgical operations. And again, when you launch a rocket or a missile into a building, it's never surgical. You know, we're not removing someone's tonsils, we're blowing up a floor in a building. So sometimes things can go wrong. But even in these last attacks, it's a story within a building that is knocked out. and it's just the people that were targeted in the attack. We're so careful, in fact, that, what was it, a year and a half ago, the Air Force attacked a building in Gaza that had a bunch of Hamas officials in it, and they all survived. They survived because the bomb that Israel used was too small to cause enough damage, because there was concern of the collateral damage around that building. So it's been interesting,
This story always repeats itself, and the sad part is, despite the IDF being so surgical and so careful not to harm the civilian population, still we are attacked by the international media, by politicians all over the world that claim that we are harming the civilians and that we should always have proportionate response. I've been hearing about this term since the beginning of this war, proportionate response. What proportion? I mean, we will attack. We want us to be proportionate. We want us to attack each family, each baby, each woman, the same number that we were attacked. That's not proportionate. This is a war. And I think that the IDF, and I know this firsthand and you as well, is going above and beyond to make sure that the civilians are unharmed. Let's just list a few things that we do in the Gaza Strip on a daily basis. Okay, before the IDF enters an area in the Gaza Strip, we call the residents, tell them, okay, move out of this area, because we are invading that area to take care of business and to neutralize Hamas terrorists, infrastructure, and other missile launching sites that are aimed at Israel. Okay, you can go to this area next to it that will be safe. This road is safe to be used. We will protect this road ourselves, because we know that Hamas terrorists will attack you in order to prevent you from leaving this area. So that's a safe road. Take it, please. And more than that, we throw leaflets so that people that don't have a phone will be able to understand. And with all this, we are definitely harming ourselves, because for sure the terrorists and the hostages are amongst those who are evacuating into the so-called safe zones. And then, a few months later, we need to do an operation in these safe zones, because the safe zones became another terrorist infrastructure hub and facility from which they launch operations against Israel. So this is the situation that we're at. It's very hard to operate like this, but we are doing our best, and I think that Israel is basically leading the world in this new method and tactics of warfare in densely heavy civilian populated areas against terrorists that don't care about human lives. So it's important to emphasize that. And that's what we've been doing with these assassinations. Instead of retaliating by destroying a whole village in Lebanon that will, kill many civilians, we decide to basically target the leaders alone, the high-ranking leaders, so that they will know that any decision that they make, there will be a heavy price tag on their heads. And that's the way that the IDF is doing it, and I think that it's working.
And I think there's a very interesting history there. Israel has been doing this as a system for many, many years. Over 15 years on a regular basis, both with the Iranian threat and specifically with the Hamas. I watched a bunch of older interviews with Hamas leaders prepping for this podcast, and you can see that it's so common with them that when they accept a role, like let's say you get appointed to a job, and it's sort of like with your orientation in this new job, you also know that there's a chance that your life is going to end abruptly in the near future. And they talk about it. They talk about it openly, Hamas leaders, and they've done so for over 15 years. When they go and they say, I know that this new role might come with the price of my life, and I'm willing to sacrifice my life through it. And Israel has, and again, we can debate whether this works or not, instead of retaliating against a group of population or just anyone armed or in uniform on the other side, it's always been targeted at the head. And we're not unique in that. Many other countries do the same against terrorist organizations and against non-terrorist organizations, against countries and enemies, and that exists since the dawn of human history. That's not a new thing. The word assassin goes all the way back to Shoshani, to like the sects of assassins that existed in the early Muslim world, and then as they spread through the world.
What's that, like Assassin's Creed? Like the Assassin's Creed time,
like the game Assassin's Creed or Prince of Persia, that look, that comes from Shoshani, from that historical root of like the assassins, and there's always that shroud of mystery, the ninjas, in Japan, and the Shoshani here, and all these sects that would do this. And what it does is it's a tool of implementing fear into the hearts of leaders. And that's really the reason Israel and the United States, to a lesser degree, have done this, is essentially if you think about the Iranian perspective, and we've talked about this in the past, think about the Iranian perspective, where you have someone who's, he's going to be a department head in the Iranian nuclear plant. He's not even the head of the program.
Yeah.
And he knows that there's a track record that says that with the promotion comes the chance that one morning he might not wake up in his bed, not from natural causes. That one day he might have a mysterious falafel poisoning that he wasn't expecting to get.
Hummus poisoning, yeah.
Where his life suddenly ends surprisingly. One day he might be driving down the road and a machine gun fires through the windows of his car. And we don't, again, it's been done in such creative ways that you really have to see the goal behind it is to plant fear in their hearts. And it's been successful. Tomer, our producer, was talking to us before the show, saying there's people looking at the video footage that came out of Iran post the assassination, and that says it looks like the leaders of Iran are looking to the sky because they're in a public event, fearing of some kind of flying object coming their direction. And you have to get in their head and think what does it do to your psyche when you know this is something that can happen at any time?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that if as this becomes more publicly, it also discourages the next generation from pursuing that type of career. I mean, if the risks are so high, then maybe more people will not choose to be a leader in a terrorist organization. But being here,
do you think the evidence shows that's true, Yair? I'm asking you personally. Do you think the evidence shows that's true?
Well, I know that in the Gaza Strip it is not true, but I'm hoping that the Iranian people is a bit different than that. But I'm not certain. When you talk about a terrorist organization like Hamas that is only fed by death and destruction, and you see that when Israel neutralized the sons of Ismail Haniyeh, he and his wife posted pictures of them being happy, and they celebrated their death as martyrs. So that's very hard to compete. I mean, if the goal of a person is to die fighting Israel, then that's actually, he achieved his goal when we assassinated him. So that's a hard situation. But I am hoping and praying that the people of Iran have a different, ambition in their life. I know that this is not the case in most areas, but when you're talking about an organized military, I believe that there might be a little bit of a different structure and career paths to that situation. But of course, it's very individualistically. But Matti, there's another point I wanted to discuss. By being here in the United States, I've been hearing a lot of commentary about Israel is not doing a good job by neutralizing the leaders that are in charge of the negotiations for releasing the hostages. Okay?
Why would we do that?
and okay, that's a valid question, but that's the difference in perspective and the misunderstanding of how the Middle East works. Okay, this is a correct perspective, correct question if you're talking about Western society, because you don't want to kill the people in charge of the negotiations that you're talking with them. But here, the Middle East and these terrorist organizations only understand fear, power, and strength.
Wait, I didn't understand the question. Are people challenging you? Why did you kill the person that was negotiating? Was that the challenge?
Correct. The challenge is, okay, Israel is not being smart by assassinating those responsible for the negotiations to release the hostages in the Gaza Strip. Okay? And I want to hear what you think about this idea.
I think you're correct. It's so complex here. The reality is, and there's never ending, if you sort of dive into Israeli media and Israeli press and Israeli interviews with former generals and head of Secret Service and things like that, we usually have the ability to eliminate the leaders of other terrorist organizations and entities around us. They usually exist. There's a big but though. You never know who's going to replace them, and you never know what the response is going to be. And usually, with the current leader of Hezbollah, we removed his predecessor. And the current leader of Hezbollah, Nasrallah, is much worse and much smarter and much more conniving than his predecessor. And the same goes for Hamas. We've eliminated a long row of people. And you think it's like, this isn't a rational discussion. You really don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
At the same time, these people have been hiding in plain sight. You look at the leaders of Hamas. It's not a single person. It's groups of people. They're living in different cities. Once they're in Turkey, once they're in Jordan. Another time now, they'll be in Qatar. So they go between the places, and they're using the tension between Israel and the United States and their host country to sort of play into their political game. Because there's a price, a diplomatic price, a financial price, a relational price. If you go and carry out an act of violence on foreign soil, there's going to be a public price for you to pay for that. So, I mean, it's complex. Again, you can also say about the negotiations with Hamas, that Hamas negotiations don't start and end in the negotiation room. They're playing a multidimensional game where, on the one hand, those leaders are the ones negotiating and saying, we're trying to reach an agreement. And at the same time, they're trying to maximize pain and humiliation to the Israeli people during that process.
Yeah.
So they're not innocently negotiating. They're trying to use the negotiation as part of the terrorist campaign to inflict pain and fear. And I think on a moral level, I think on a military level, it's good that we publicly say to the Iranians and to Hamas and to Hezbollah, look, we've taken off our gloves. We're not playing nice and we're not playing friendly anymore. We're coming for you, wherever you are. And these people can be committed to death and committed to destruction. I think they're still human, and in their core, they're afraid. They fear for their lives, they fear for their families' lives. And if we need to pressure that point to get them to be less effective, to occupy their bandwidth, to have them looking at the sky, and every time they hear a buzzing sound to be concerned it's a missile or a drone, so be it. If that's what's needed to fight this war, and that is what we need to fight this war. We have an enemy who has no second thoughts about bombing children playing soccer. We have an enemy who has absolutely they have no moral problems of hurting children, of hurting innocent young. Why would we have to fear from hurting their leadership? I think there's no problem with that at all.
Yeah, and I think a point that you mentioned is very important about this strategy of eliminating the leadership positions in these organizations. Because it doesn't matter if they can replace them with ideologically evil people, but it's very hard for them to replace them with capable people with experience, with people with the know-how. That takes time, and you need to really find the right person, equip him, train him. And I think that in that area, the IDF's decision to basically target all the leadership structure of Hamas and all the leadership structure of Hezbollah in the north really weakens these organizations and harms their ability to launch attacks against Israel, because every time they need to reorganize, regroup, find a new leadership, he needs to assume his new role, and then he needs to fear that his life will be ended very shortly. And it's really hard to train people. It takes time. I mean, I don't know if you guys back at home know that I just hired someone new to a new role. It takes a few months for that person to understand what he's doing, and you need to invest in him. And the whole organization is basically taking a step back for that time before that role is fully assumed and that new person gets into his position and moves forward and start developing that role. So that's, I think, a good strategy, despite the fact that we are dealing with people that do not care about their own lives, about their children's lives, and about their population, their people, basically. So if they can, replace their people easily, it doesn't mean that they can train them that easily. And this is what we see in the Gaza Strip. So we see that
I don't think you can ever replace senior leadership easily.
Yeah.
And if you think about the American case studies, and I'm thinking about this as we're talking, I think it's an interesting case study where Hamas leaders that have been targeted, it didn't take the Hamas long to replace them. They might have hurt the organization, but it wasn't noticeable to the public eye. But if you look at what the Americans have done in recent years, Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, America, in a very public display of their opinion of his actions, takes him out in essentially what's a public execution. And it was a strong response from the then Trump administration saying, this man decided that he's going to harm American soldiers and we are going to retaliate, period. And they did strongly. And again, we know that it hurt the Revolutionary Guard. We know it hurt Iran's interest in the Middle East. We know it slowed down their proxy war. That's one case. And then look at Osama bin Laden, another great story, great movie, or movies I should say at this point, and books plural at this point. But you hear about it, America, goes to great lengths, huge resources into removing the head. And this is post the heyday of this organization. And still it makes such a strong public statement to everyone around them of if you are our enemy, this is what's going to happen to you. And it's not really that their death really shuts down the organization or anything like that, but it's a strong public statement about how you stand up for what's right and important to you. And it's a strong public statement of the fact that you are stronger, better informed, have a longer stretched arm, to use that term, that you can reach into whatever cave, whatever house, whatever complex they're hiding in, pull them out, and remove them. And I think that also has value in this part of the world. I think in every part of the world. We just, in the Middle East, we're less, I think, ashamed to talk about it. If you're really able to show look, I'm angry and I'm offended and I've lost face, and I'm going to regain that by showing you how strong, how vicious, how violent I'm willing to be to regain the position of our country in this region. Because again, whether bad things or good things happen to your soldiers, your troops, your border patrols, a lot of it has to do with your projection of power. All that to say that I think sometimes in the Middle East and other places in the world, we say in Hebrew, Ba'al Habayit ishtagea. The homeowner has gone crazy. Sometimes you just have to have your enemies know, and your contestants, they have to know that you're willing to go ballistic, no pun intended. That you're willing to do whatever it takes to get things back to where they should be as far as the power balance goes. And that's what just happened.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that Israel made it very clear about how it's going to respond. So Israel is not willing to cross the line and respond against civilians in this conflict since the beginning. Even after Iran launched 250 ballistic missiles and drones at Israel, Israel responded by surgical attacks against a defense system in an area of a nuclear site. Okay? So that's how Israel is doing it. And now also, after they attack our civilians, we attack those responsible, the leaders. And I think that's a good way of matching the equation. So they don't care about the low-level civilians, so to speak, and the civilian population. But we are not going down to their level. We will attack those responsible and those that gave the order. So I think that's also really nice on a moral level, that Israel maintains its integrity by not harming those that are not involved, even if the other side is doing that constantly. So I think I'm really happy to be on the side that has this moral level, and the IDF is really operating like that. I mean, we've been seeing that on and on since the beginning of this war. I mean, just imagine, some of the soldiers that went into the Gaza Strip had family members, knew somebody that was either murdered, kidnapped, or killed, or other thing happened to him on the 7th of October or afterwards, or in the north. Some of the soldiers don't have a house anymore because of the bombing on the northern border with Hezbollah. And still, I mean, the IDF, when we find civilians, we take care of them. We give them food. We create and allow and facilitate safe zones in the Gaza Strip. And these people are sponsoring, voting, and now even supporting Hamas, even after all this time, according to the Palestinian polls. So it's really nice that despite all this evil, Israel still is able to maintain a moral integrity that I stand with, and I think it's really nice, and that is why we will win this war, because I always believe that good will overcome evil,
100%.
So
that's why we're smiling, because we both believe that. We started this podcast talking about targeted assassinations. I didn't know, Yair, we're going to take it to talking about stoicism and how showing restraint is the true projection of power. But I like the point. Let's shift a little to talk about the how, because I think this is where things really get interesting. I'm personally interested always in the technical, how the weapons work, how the intelligence works, and stuff like that. We sat recently, I'm trying to think when it was, I sat with an Air Force pilot who was involved in the bombing of the Iraqi nuclear program back in the 80s. and on a command and intelligence level in other operations.
Yeah.
And we talked to him and another expert on air defense on how it is that we're able to do these attacks. Because it seems like, you're running in your head like the mechanics of it. How do our Air Force jets get through sort of the air defenses of these countries, of the Iranians? Again, the Iranian country could say a lot of things about their economy, their politics, but they're not a primitive people. They have technology, they have air defense, they have a limited air-to-air fighting capability, but they definitely have missiles. They're equipped with some of the best that the Russian industry can provide. And not only them, the Houthis have equipment, and others in this region have equipment, Hezbollah has equipment. And somehow, the story never is the Air Force was shot down on the way to. It's usually we bombed someone deep inside Iran, deep inside Yemen, and no one even knows we were there until afterwards.
Yeah,
after
and we can claim that we don't know if it's us or if it was somebody else.
Yeah, I find that fascinating because we were talking about this before. We still don't know what happened in Iran. What we do know is something flew through a window and blew up a house and killed I guess he's one or two, it depends how you count in the Hamas movement. Let's say he's number one on the political side, Ismail Haniyeh. He's number one on the political side, and something flies through his window and blows up the floor. But was it a shoulder-mounted rocket or guided missile? Was it launched off an F-35? Was it launched from a drone? Was it launched from a submarine? We really don't know. And I'm not saying this lightly. No one knows what happened. And even the Iranians, who are usually quick to blame, as we are with the Hezbollah and the Iranians, when you know what the source is, you immediately say, this was them who did this. And in this case, the Iranians said, like everyone else, so Hezbollah, of course, says no. We know it's Israelis because they saw the jets, and Israel claimed responsibility. With the Hamas assassination within Iran, the Iranians said, we're investigating. And it wasn't like we're investigating because we're ashamed of it. We don't know what happened. And I find that in itself to be incredible.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really, really interesting to understand how the intelligence agencies, the Mossad, and the Israeli Air Force operate together in order to find and destroy these evil people and these targets. And I think I reported that Tomer gave me a really interesting brief, our producer, director.
Our producer.
He said that, okay, so the intelligence agency have two people. One guy or one team is in charge of mapping out the target, meaning understanding his patterns. Where does he go on a usual basis? What's his routine? And they create this sort of like a profile, day-to-day routine, a portfolio about the target, about the person that we are looking at. And then the other team is called a trapper or trapper team, something like that. And they are in charge of making sure that he is exactly where you want him to be at that location and at that time of the attack. Okay, so combining these two teams, you know where he will be and where he is at an exact moment and can find the best way to notify your striking teams to carry out the attack. So that's kind of how it works. It sounds maybe easy, but it's a lot of intelligence that involves multiple people, and you need to follow a specific individual. And in this case, Ismail Haniyeh was stationed a few hundred meters away from the new Iranian president. Where the Iranian president was staying, he was staying a few hundred meters away from that apartment. So it just means that this is the most secure area in Iran. And yet, the IDF was able to target that specific room, and nobody knows how they did it and how it happened. Allegedly, of course, Israel did it,
Yeah, Israel never took official responsibility for it, but it seems that logically speaking, it's Israel or a friend of Israel that's behind this attack.
Yeah.
And I think you make a great point. Looking at the intelligence side of it and the operation side of it, is Israeli assassinations never follow the same pattern twice. I mean, when it's an airstrike, it's sort of a similar pattern again and again. But many times it's been something far more complex. It's been the En Mabhouh assassination in in Dubai, where you have a bunch of Mossad operatives
dressed as
almost
civilians,
cartoonishly bad costumes, because they know the hotel that they were targeting was full of cameras, so they're just wearing like these amusing costumes where they have fake
mustaches and hats and glasses.
Fake mustaches and hats and like tennis outfits. And I mean, when you look at it in retrospect, it's almost comical, like how obvious it was. But they got in and out of the country with untouched, highly surveilled country. And you had, all these assassination attempt in, what was his name? In Jordan in 92, Khalid Mashal. Was it Khalid Mashal? Where two Mossad operatives poisoned him in the streets of Amman, the capital of Jordan. And then they're caught. Anyway, it's a long story. And, and a guy in Iran, the guy a guy on a scooter rides by and shoots him as he's driving in his car. And another guy has a car bomb, and another guy has a remotely operated machine gun. And again, it's very creative.
Yeah.
Some of these people have, they could have been amazing artists and amazing writers, because they have some crazy creative brains.
No, definitely. No, I just am thinking about the creative side of like executing and planning these operations, like a bunch of people sitting in a room in Tel Aviv or in Israel thinking, okay, of innovative ways of executing these assassinations. And I think it's really scary for the other side to know that this is what we did and nobody has any clue. And all the other side is doing, let's say in Iran, after the assassination, we see signs, huge signs of Ismail Haniyeh, with the background, of course, of Jerusalem, because all of this is about Jerusalem and about Israel, and there doesn't make any sense other than this is a spiritual war, but that's what they have in the middle of Tehran now.
Yeah.
And they say that they will respond to Israel. They will respond heavily, and they will avenge him.
They always say that.
Yeah.
They always say it. Let's talk a bit about our emotions for a second. The Bible, Proverbs says, "Binfol oivecha al tismach." Don't rejoice at the falling of your enemies. That's Proverbs 37, 30 something. Anyway, and we always say that in Hebrew because you're not supposed to sort of like dance on. I don't want to say this because YouTube will strike us. You're not supposed to rejoice over the hurt of your enemies, even though you've been victorious over your enemies. And at the same time, like a lot of this war is emotional. A lot of this war has to do with the way a nation feels. A lot of this war has to do with the public appearance and the national narrative. Because it's ideologies and religions and gods, the God of Israel and the God of the Iranians, that were fighting against each other on multiple levels. And I think we all woke up on that morning recently, and we hear that that overnight the IDF has removed two very high-level targets in a very impressive manner. One of them we're still not sure was the IDF or how it was done. And I'd be interested to hear. I woke up in Israel feeling that. You woke up in the US feeling that. What did you feel when that happened?
No, listen, I felt that, first of all, I felt really proud of the IDF and the abilities that we have on the one hand. And on the second hand, I felt really happy to know that we did something in response to them attacking us and basically striking the civilians in our country. And I think that that's the key here. In this case, we had to respond strongly because people don't understand that there's been strikes between Israel and Hezbollah on a daily basis. This war, I mean, every day we've been to the northern border multiple times with our team, and it's a war zone. You see explosions on their side, and then you see explosions on our side, then you see explosions on their side. So there's always a back and forth punches going on, and nobody's talking about it because it's not high level enough. And that morning that we woke up here and understood what happened, it was a different ball game because it makes headlines, it hits the news. And this war, as we always been saying, is being fought on multiple fronts. So you have the physical front of an active war, and you have the front of the public opinion and the media, and truth versus false narratives, fake and news, manipulation, which is a huge front. So taking into, and of course there is the spiritual front, but taking into consideration in a strategical plan of operation, you need to think, is this gonna give me headlines in the international media? Is this gonna cause a buzz in social media? This is things that the IDF needs to consider now while taking care of our defense abilities, tasks, and everything that goes on in Israel. And I think this is new, and this is part of the new war against terrorism on our time. Everything needs to be calculated also on the media and social media networks and side of it, which is very interesting. But to answer your question shortly, I felt really proud to be an Israeli. Felt very proud that the IDF has superiority, however you say that, in the advance and the ability to carry out precise attacks inside Beirut, which is the capital of Lebanon, okay, for one, and allegedly inside Tehran, which is the capital of Iran. Okay, so that's really amazing that every time we are able to strike in the heart of our enemies and get away with it. So that's what I got out of all of this that happened a few days ago.
I felt the same feeling in Israel. It's a sense of like national joy of like, yes, we got them kind of thing. And again, it's not about the person. It's about the sense of like just a few days earlier, we were all feeling the sadness and the heaviness of the children that were lost up north. And again, the pain of that on a collective level. Like when someone's hurt in this country, we feel a collective pain. Jewish or non-Jewish, it doesn't matter. Like we're a family, we feel that. And then when you have that moment of success, it's a national moment of rejoicing. I'm happy you mentioned social media, because we almost forgot to mention that we've realized that news is moving too fast to just have once a day updates. If our viewers don't know this, Yair has updates every single day on our YouTube channel, but we're in the process on our Instagram channel of having news updates multiple times a day. So if you're not on our Instagram, go find TBN Israel on Instagram, and there's going to be multiple updates throughout the day as news unfolds in this part of the world. Sadly, whatever, I don't know how to frame this. The reality is here in this land is that news doesn't start and end at a specific hour. So we wanted to make sure we can get information from here continuously throughout the day.
Yeah, definitely. And the reason that we want people to understand what is happening here is because this war is also fought on the social media platforms. It's also being fought on the public opinion arena of this world, and it's also being fought in the spiritual realm. So in order to pray for Israel, for the peace of Jerusalem, for the IDF soldiers, and for the people of this region, you need to understand what is happening here. So this is what we would like to provide on a day-to-day basis, on an hourly basis now on an Instagram, is updates of what is happening. So if you want to pray for Israel, you can take this update, this report, and pray for our generals, for our leaders, for the civilians that were harmed in this conflict. That's an actual thing that you can do as part of your daily prayer routine for Israel. Okay? Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And this is how you can do it.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that we always end on a positive note. We know how the story ends. The Bible is very clear about it. The Bible is very clear about God's faithfulness, and we've seen that in our lifetime. We've seen it in the previous lifetimes and throughout history. On the morning of Israel's successful attack on these leaders of Hezbollah and Hamas, when you read the Torah in Hebrew, you sing, I'm paraphrasing in English, rise up, O God, and scatter your enemies. And that was like you sing it out loud when you're about to read from the Torah, from the Bible. And that was what I was thinking. I mean, this has been a war that's been going on for millennia. We've always had enemies. We've always had threats. We've always called out to God, God, save us. We don't know what we're going to do. And God's always come through in this part of the world. Again and again and again and again, and against all the odds. Once it was the Babylonians and the Romans and who wasn't here. And now it's the Iranians, it's the Persians again. At least second time around. And we're still here. We're still smiling. We're still believing in God's goodness for this part of the world. And we know that even though it's going to be hard and difficult, and we're going to have to call out for God to God for mercy, He's still going to come through for us.
Definitely, Mati. And if you guys think that God was only doing these amazing miracles in biblical times, let's say separation of the sea when the exodus from Egypt came, and saving Israel, and Jesus walking on the water, you think these miracles happened only in the Bible and 2,000 years ago?
They're still happening
then you're
today.
wrong. Take a look at Israel. We're fighting multiple fronts against huge nations, also in the early times of the country and also now. So that's why God is supporting Israel, because Israel is an example of his faithfulness to the people of Israel, to the Jewish people. And if he's faithful to Israel, he's faithful to each and every one of you. Okay, so that's, I think, the message that why you should support Israel and why you should be involved and why you should pray for Israel. Not because the people of Israel are great or special, just because they are an example of God's faithfulness to each and every one of you. So, anything to add, Mati? Or we're...
No, this has been fun. It's been fun. I prefer it in person, Yair. Come back sometime soon. But this is fun. It's also, again, it's just a reminder of how fast things are moving here in this part of the world. I mean, there's things we were talking about 3 days ago of like, this is the material for the next podcast or
weren't
video.
Relevant.
Today you can barely remember what happened, and they were breaking headlines globally. It's been exciting. I love that we get to do this. I love that we get to tell people in depth about what's happening in this part of the world. And I want to encourage our viewers. I mean, one, we need people to subscribe. We need people to share this material. You said this right. I mean, we're fighting a battle for truth and for information and for perspective, and we try to do exactly that. And if people also feel led to support this work, get on our website. There's a very easy link to follow. Make a small donation or a large donation. It doesn't matter. Sure. But it helps us know that you care. It helps us know that we should continue to create this content. Yeah,
definitely. So thanks so much, Mati. It was really, really interesting. And
thank you, Yair.
Let's do this
Take
again
care
next
in the
week.
US. Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at